No one could calm the alien dragon younglings until the human Maid sang an old Earth lullaby. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The 7 moons of Draconix Prime cast their pale light across the undulating landscape of the royal nursery grounds. Inside the obsidian palace, chaos reigned as it had for the past 14 nights, with the desperate cries of dragonling younglings echoing through crystalline corridors that amplified every sound. Ambassador Julia Clark stepped carefully around the shattered remains of what appeared to be an ancient vase, following the harried palace attendant who had been sent to retrieve her. The diplomatic quarters had been peaceful enough, but even there, the distant wailing had penetrated the soundproofed walls designed to provide visiting dignitaries with restful sleep. The council has been in emergency session for 3 days now, the attendant explained, his scaled skin shimmering with stress-induced bioluminescence. The royal clutch has reached maturity phase, but they refuse to settle. Without proper rest cycles, they cannot complete their cognitive bonding. The future of the draconian leadership is at stake. Julia nodded, trying to hide her exhaustion. As Earth's first ambassador to the technologically superior Draconian Empire, she had spent months carefully navigating the complex protocols and customs of a species that, until 5 years ago, humans had no idea existed. The diplomatic implications of this crisis were enormous. "I understand your ambassador Bennett is unavailable," the attendant continued, referring to Julia's senior colleague who had been recalled to Earth for emergency consultations. "But the High Matriarch specifically requested human assistance. Your species has successfully raised younglings for generations, and our traditional methods are failing." They rounded a corner, and the wailing intensified. 2 massive guards stood at attention outside ornate doors inlaid with what appeared to be actual starlight captured in crystalline form. Both warriors wore the ceremonial armor of the Royal Clutch Guard, and both looked as though they hadn't slept in days. "Ambassador Clark has arrived," the attendant announced. The guards exchanged glances, then simultaneously bowed their crested heads. "The High Matriarch awaits within," one said, voice rumbling like distant thunder. The door swung open, and Julia stepped into chaos. The royal nursery was a vast, domed chamber with a central pit lined with luminescent silk. In that pit, 7 dragonling younglings, each the size of a large earth dog, thrashed and keened. Their iridescent scales flickered with distress patterns, wings unfurling and retracting in agitated movements. Around the pit, at least 24 draconian attendants moved in carefully choreographed patterns, humming harmonic sequences that were clearly having no effect. And there, at the far side of the chamber, stood the imposing figure of High Matriarch Vizara, ruler of 12 star systems and guardian of the sacred flame. Her massive wings were folded against her back, but tension radiated from her powerful form. "Ambassador," Vizara's voice carried across the chamber without effort, immediately silencing the attendants though having no effect on the younglings. "I appreciate your swift response to our situation." Julia approached and executed the formal bow required when addressing the draconian leader. "High Matriarch, I am honored by your confidence in Earth's assistance, though I must confess I'm unsure how I personally can help." Vizara's multifaceted eyes studied Julia with unnerving intensity. "We have exhausted our traditional methods. The Royal Clutch has never experienced such prolonged distress. Our xenobiologists believe there may be something in human child-rearing practices that could succeed where our methods have failed." Julia glanced at the writhing younglings. "I'm not a childcare expert, Your Magnificence. I specialized in interspecies trade relations." "Yet you are human," Vizara stated, as if this alone qualified Julia for the task. "And we have observed that your species possesses unusual techniques for calming your young. Our diplomatic observers on Earth have documented countless instances where human caretakers successfully soothe distressed offspring using methods unknown in our culture." Before Julia could respond, a side door opened, and a small procession entered. Leading them was an elderly draconian with elaborate head crests that marked him as a senior scientist. Behind him trailed several assistants carrying equipment, and, to Julia's surprise, a human woman. "Ah, first scientist Calix," Vazara acknowledged. "You bring news?" The scientist bowed deeply. "High Matriarch, we have analyzed the neurological patterns of the royal clutch. Their distress appears linked to the recent stellar anomaly. The unusual radiation from the binary star merger has affected their developing synapse formations." Vazara's tail lashed once, the only indication of her distress. "Can this damage be reversed?" "It is not damage, precisely," Calix clarified. "Rather, their neural pathways are forming along alternate templates. They require different stimuli than previous generations. We believe." He hesitated, then gestured to the human woman standing quietly behind him. "We believe this human service worker may possess insight." All eyes turned to the woman, who stepped forward with remarkable composure considering she was facing the ruler of an interstellar empire. She executed a perfect draconian formal bow, which impressed Julia immediately. "Your Magnificence, I am Lily Dawson. I work as a household staff member for the human diplomatic residence." Julia recognized her then, one of the domestic staff who maintained the Earth Embassy complex. She had only spoken with Lily occasionally, mainly pleasantries in passing. Vazara's head tilted in the gesture that indicated curious interest. "And what insight do you offer, human Lily Dawson?" Lily straightened, her voice steady despite the intimidating audience. "The Younglings' distress patterns remind me of something I've seen before. On Earth, I worked in a care facility for children before joining the diplomatic service. Their cries sound similar to what we call colic, a condition where infants cry inconsolably." First scientist Calix interjected. "We observed her interacting with a distressed human infant during her residence maintenance duties. The methods she employed produced immediate neurological calming in the human offspring. The patterns were remarkably similar to what would theoretically calm our younglings in their current state." Vazara's attention returned to Lily with renewed intensity. "What are these methods?" Lily glanced at Julia, seemingly seeking permission or support. Julia gave an encouraging nod, fascinated by this unexpected turn. "Music, Your Magnificence," Lily said. "Specifically, singing. Human lullabies, songs we use to help our children sleep. The combination of rhythm, melody, and the vibrations produced by the human voice can trigger calming responses." The chamber fell silent except for the continued wailing of the dragonlings. The draconian attendants exchanged glances that Julia had learned to interpret as skepticism. "Draconian younglings have excellent auditory processing," Calix noted. "Their sensory systems are highly developed even at this early stage. It is possible. We have performed the traditional harmonic sequences," one of the nursery attendants objected. "They have been ineffective." "With respect," Lily replied, "human lullabies are different. They contain specific patterns and vocal qualities that might provide the alternative neural stimulation the first scientist mentioned." Vazara studied the human woman for a long moment, then looked at the distressed younglings. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of imperial decree. "You will attempt this method." It wasn't a request. Lily bowed again. "I would be honored, Your Magnificence. However, I should mention that physical proximity typically enhances the effect. Would it be permitted for me to approach the royal clutch?" The question sent a ripple of shock through the assembled draconians. Royal younglings were sacred, their physical safety protected by layers of security and tradition. Only the highest-ranking attendants were allowed direct contact. Julia held her breath. This could either be a breakthrough moment in human-draconian relations or a diplomatic catastrophe. Vazara's wings shifted slightly, a sign of internal conflict. "First scientist, your assessment?" Calix considered carefully. "The human poses no biological threat. Our preliminary studies show no cross-species pathogens of concern. And if her method proves effective." He left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. After what seemed an eternity, Vazara nodded. "You may approach, human Lily Dawson, but under supervision. Two royal clutch guards immediately positioned themselves near the edge of the nesting pit. Their ceremonial weapons transformed from decorative to threatening in an instant. Julia felt her heart rate accelerate. One wrong move, one misinterpreted gesture, and this could end very badly. Lily, however, showed no fear. She approached the edge of the pit and carefully removed her shoes, a gesture that caused murmurs among the Draconians. Julia recognized it as a sign of respect in their culture, one typically reserved for sacred spaces. With deliberate movements, Lily descended into the pit. The dragonlings immediately took notice, their wailing briefly intensifying as they sensed a new presence. 7 pairs of jewel-like eyes fixed on the human, wings flaring in what could be either curiosity or threat. The chamber grew utterly silent. Even the attendants seemed to hold their breath. Lily settled herself cross-legged in the center of the pit, smoothing her simple uniform. She smiled gently at the younglings, who had formed a semicircle around her, their scaled heads tilted in identical postures of assessment. "Hello, little ones," she said softly. Then, without further preamble, she began to sing. The melody was simple, the words in an earth language Julia didn't recognize. The song had a gentle, swaying rhythm, rising and falling like ocean waves. Lily's voice was clear and sweet, not professionally trained, but pleasant and soothing. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The dragonling nearest to Lily froze, its multifaceted eyes widening. Its distress patterns faded, replaced by a gentle blue-green glow of curiosity. It took a hesitant step toward her, head weaving slightly in time with the melody. Lily continued singing, her hands now gently moving in patterns that complemented the song. A second dragonling settled, then a third. Within minutes, all 7 had ceased their wailing, their attention completely captured by the human and her song. As the lullaby continued, the younglings moved closer. The boldest of them actually settled against Lily's knee, its eyes half closing in what appeared to be contentment. Another curled nearby, wings finally folding in relaxation. By the time Lily finished the song, all 7 royal dragonlings were settled in a peaceful cluster around her. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The chamber remained silent for several heartbeats after the last note faded. Then Vizara herself stepped forward, moving with a grace that belied her massive size. She approached the edge of the pit and gazed down at the unprecedented scene of her royal offspring peacefully arranged around a human. "Remarkable," the High Matriarch said, her voice softer than Julia had ever heard it. "What is this song called?" Lily looked up, careful not to disturb the dragonling that had now actually fallen asleep against her. "It's an old lullaby from my grandmother's homeland, Your Magnificence." She called it the Starlight Cradle Song. "It speaks of stars," Vizara inquired. "Yes, Your Magnificence. It tells of how the stars watch over sleeping children, keeping them safe until morning." Something that might have been a smile briefly crossed Vizara's reptilian features. Appropriate for the future rulers of a star-spanning empire. She turned to First Scientist Calix. "I want this studied immediately. Understand how it functions and why it succeeds where our methods failed." Calix bowed deeply. "At once, High Matriarch." Julia watched in amazement as Lily began a second lullaby, this one slightly different, but equally effective. The remaining dragonlings settled into sleep, their scaled bodies rising and falling in the rhythm of peaceful respiration. Vizara moved to stand beside Julia, her massive presence making the human ambassador feel particularly small. "Your species continues to surprise us, Ambassador Clark." "I'm as surprised as you are, Your Magnificence," Julia admitted. "I had no idea Lily possessed this talent." "Not merely talent," Vizara corrected. "Knowledge, cultural heritage. This is what makes your species valuable to us. You approach problems differently. You carry solutions in unexpected forms." She gestured toward the peaceful scene in the nesting pit. "My advisors suggested we might need to sedate the royal clutch, a measure that could have caused permanent developmental damage. Instead, this human brings songs from her grandmother." The High Matriarch turned her full attention to Julia. The human Lily Dawson must remain to continue this treatment. The royal clutch requires consistent care during this critical phase. It wasn't a request, but it was also far from unreasonable. Julia nodded. I'm sure she would be honored to assist, though we should formalize the arrangement through proper diplomatic channels. Of course, Vizara agreed. She will be appropriately compensated and afforded all courtesies due to one who serves the royal clutch. Julia glanced at Lily, who continued singing softly to the sleeping dragonlings, her expression serene. She seemed completely at ease, despite being surrounded by alien young from the most powerful royal lineage in this sector of the galaxy. There is another matter, Vizara continued, lowering her voice. Our trade negotiations have stalled on several points, particularly regarding human access to our terraforming technologies. Julia maintained a neutral expression, though her pulse quickened. The terraforming issue had been a sticking point for months, with the draconian negotiators refusing to budge on their proprietary methods that could transform marginally habitable planets into Earth-like worlds. Perhaps, Vizara said, watching her offspring sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks, we might revisit those discussions with fresh perspective. Earth would welcome the opportunity, Your Magnificence, Julia replied carefully. We shall convene tomorrow, then, after I have observed more of these human lullabies. With that, Vizara moved away, issuing quiet orders to her attendants. Julia remained where she stood, processing what had just happened. A simple human lullaby had accomplished what all the advanced technology and traditional methods of the Draconian Empire could not. And in doing so, it might have just secured humanity's access to technology that could open dozens of new worlds for colonization. As the diplomatic and scientific staff began to file out of the chamber, leaving only the necessary attendants and guards, Julia caught Lily's eye. The human maid smiled, still surrounded by sleeping dragonlings, and gave a small shrug as if to say, who would have thought? Who indeed, Julia mused. As Earth's ambassador, she had studied draconian politics, culture, technology, and military capabilities. She had prepared for negotiations on trade, territory, and technology transfer. But nowhere in her briefings had anyone suggested that the key to breakthrough diplomatic relations might be a lullaby from someone's grandmother. The royal nursery settled into peaceful quiet, the soft breathing of sleeping dragonlings the only sound. Outside, the 7 moons of Draconix Prime continued their eternal dance across the night sky, casting their light on a scene that would forever change the relationship between two very different species from very different worlds. In the days that followed, Lily Dawson became an unexpected celebrity within the Draconian Palace. Word spread quickly of the human who could calm the royal clutch with nothing but her voice, and high-ranking officials found excuses to pass by the nursery during her singing sessions. Scientific teams recorded and analyzed every note, every pattern, every subtle variation in her performances. Julia found herself suddenly negotiating from a position of unexpected strength. The High Matriarch's fresh perspective translated into significant concessions on previously contentious issues. Terraforming technology, previously off-limits, was now on the table with reasonable licensing terms. Trade routes through draconian space that had been restricted were opening for discussion. Even cultural exchange programs, which had been viewed with suspicion by the traditionally insular Draconians, were now being actively considered. They're calling it sonic diplomacy, Julia told Lily during a brief meeting in the diplomatic quarters. You've accomplished more in 3 days than our entire diplomatic corps has in 3 years. Lily smiled, though fatigue showed around her eyes. She had been maintaining an exhausting schedule, spending most of her waking hours with the royal clutch. I'm just singing the songs my grandmother taught me. It's the dragonlings who deserve the credit. They're remarkably responsive. The first scientist has a theory about that, Julia said, offering Lily a cup of actual Earth tea, a luxury in the Draconian Palace. Apparently, the frequency range of the human female voice hits some sweet spot in their auditory processing. Combined with the melodic patterns of Earth lullabies, it triggers a neurochemical response similar to what their ancestors experienced in their original evolutionary environment. That sounds very scientific, Lily replied with a small smile. For providing essential care to the future rulers of the Draconian Empire, Julia corrected with a smile. This isn't just childcare, Lily. It's high diplomacy now. Before Lily could respond, Julia's communication device chimed with a distinctive tone that indicated a priority message from Earth. She excused herself and stepped into her private office to take the call. The holographic figure of Ambassador Ethan Cole, Earth's senior diplomatic coordinator, materialized above her desk. His expression was grave. Julia, we've received intelligence that changes everything. The Draconian royal clutch, it's not what we thought. Julia frowned. What do you mean? They're the High Matriarch's offspring, future rulers of the Empire. Cole shook his head. Not exactly. Our xenobiologists have been analyzing the genetic data shared by First Scientist Calyx. These aren't just any royal younglings. They're flame bearers. The term meant nothing to Julia. I don't understand the significance. Flame bearers occur once in a generation, if that. They possess the genetic markers for direct connection to what Draconians call the sacred flame, essentially the collected consciousness and wisdom of their entire species, preserved across millennia. In their mythology, it's divine. In practical terms, it's an incredibly advanced form of genetic memory and inherited knowledge. Julia felt a chill. And this matters because flame bearers become more than rulers. They become living gods to the Draconians. And according to our intelligence, this particular clutch shows markers for the strongest connection to the sacred flame in over 10,000 years. Cole's expression grew even more serious. The future direction of their entire civilization will be shaped by these 7 younglings. And right now, their developmental well-being appears to be in the hands of a human made singing lullabies. Julia sat down slowly, the implications washing over her. Does the High Council know about this? They're being briefed now. But Julia, you need to understand. This is simultaneously the greatest opportunity and the greatest risk humanity has ever faced in interspecies relations. If these flame bearers develop with positive associations toward humans, then humanity gains powerful allies for generations to come, Julia finished. But if anything goes wrong... Exactly. Cole's holographic form flickered slightly. The Council is sending additional diplomatic and scientific personnel, but they won't arrive for at least 2 weeks. Until then, you need to ensure nothing disrupts the current arrangement. The human, Lily Dawson, must continue her work without incident. Understood, Julia said, her mind already racing through contingency plans and potential complications. After the call ended, Julia remained at her desk, trying to process this new information. What had seemed like a fortunate diplomatic breakthrough now carried stakes higher than she could have imagined. She rejoined Lily, who was finishing her tea and preparing to return to the royal nursery. Is everything all right, Ambassador? Lily asked, noticing Julia's changed demeanor. Julia forced a smile. Just some updates from Earth. Lily, how much do you know about Draconian spiritual beliefs? Particularly something called the sacred flame? Not much, Lily admitted. The younglings sometimes make patterns with their scales that the attendants call flame patterns. It seems to be important to them. It's more than important, Julia said carefully. It's fundamental to their entire civilization. And these particular younglings have a special connection to it. Lily considered this. Is that why they responded to the lullabies when nothing else worked? Possibly, Julia acknowledged. But it means your role has become even more significant than we realized. These dragonlings will grow to have enormous influence over their species. No pressure, then, Lily said with a nervous laugh. You're doing wonderfully, Julia assured her. Just be careful. Observe all protocols. And let me know immediately if anything unusual occurs. Lily nodded, though she looked slightly concerned. Of course, Ambassador. As Lily departed for the nursery, Julia couldn't help feeling she was watching a pivotal figure walk into galactic history. A human Maid whose lullabies might shape the future relationship between humanity and one of the most powerful civilizations in known space. And somewhere in the back of her mind, A warning bell was ringing. Something felt off about the situation, but she couldn't quite identify what it was. Perhaps it was just the sudden elevation of stakes, or the weight of responsibility now resting on both their shoulders. Whatever it was, Julia made a mental note to increase her own observation of the nursery activities. When it came to interspecies diplomacy, particularly with a civilization as ancient and complex as the Draconians, it was always wise to expect the unexpected. What neither Julia nor Lily could have anticipated, however, was just how unexpected events would become, or how an old Earth lullaby would ultimately change the course of two civilizations forever. The next morning, Julia received an unexpected summons to the Royal Observatory. Located at the highest point of the palace, the massive dome housed astronomical equipment that made Earth's most advanced observatories look primitive by comparison. She found High Matriarch Vizara standing before a holographic display of what appeared to be a star system. Ambassador Clark, Vizara acknowledged without turning. "I trust you slept well." "Yes, Your Magnificence," Julia replied, though in truth, she had spent most of the night reviewing everything in the Earth database about Draconian flame bearers, which wasn't much. "The human Lily continues to excel with the royal clutch," Vizara observed, finally turning to face Julia. First scientist Calix reports unprecedented neural development patterns. "The younglings are progressing at twice the expected rate." "That's wonderful news," Julia said sincerely. Vizara gestured toward the holographic display. "Do you recognize this star system?" Julia studied the configuration. "It appears to be the Proxima Centauri system, the closest star system to Earth." "Indeed." And here, the display shifted to show another system. "The Epsilon Eridani system, where your species has established its furthest colonial outpost." Julia remained silent, unsure where this was leading. And this, the hologram changed again, displaying a massive, swirling nebula. The Verazian Cloud. Within it lies the homeworld of a species known as the Krell. The name was unfamiliar to Julia. "I don't believe humanity has encountered them." "No, and if the sacred flame guides us true, you never will." Vizara's multifaceted eyes fixed on Julia with unsettling intensity. "The Krell are what your species might call predators. They seek developing civilizations, establish trade relationships, then systematically strip worlds of resources, including sentient populations for their labor camps." Julia felt a chill run down her spine. "Are they a threat to Earth?" "Not yet. Their attention is focused elsewhere. But their scouts have been detected at the edges of systems neighboring yours." Vizara gestured, and the hologram shifted to display a strategic map of the sector. "Currently, Draconian territories form a buffer between your worlds and theirs. A fortunate arrangement for humanity." The implication was clear. Julia chose her next words carefully. "The Earth Council values our developing alliance with the Draconian Empire and hopes to strengthen these bonds." "As do I," Vizara said, powering down the holographic display. "Which brings me to the purpose of this meeting. The Royal Clutch has formed an unexpected bond with the human Lily. Such a connection is unprecedented." "She does seem to have a special way with them," Julia agreed. "It is more than that," Vizara said. "Flame bearers possess heightened empathic abilities. They sense the genuine nature of those around them. That they have accepted her so completely suggests they perceive something in her that resonates with our most sacred values." Julia processed this information carefully. "That speaks well of both our species, then." "Perhaps," Vizara acknowledged. "But it presents both opportunity and challenge. The Royal Clutch will soon enter the Flame Communion phase, the most critical period in their development. Traditionally, this is a time of complete isolation with only the highest-ranking spiritual guides in attendance." "I understand," Julia said, already anticipating where this was heading. "Lily will return to the embassy when—" "No," Vizara interrupted. "The Royal Clutch has formed such a powerful bond with her that separating them now could disrupt the communion. Our spiritual leaders believe she must remain present." Julia blinked in surprise. "Present during your most sacred ritual?" "It is unprecedented," Vizara admitted. But these are unprecedented circumstances. The flame bearers have spoken, in their way. They wish the human Lily to continue her songs during the communion. The diplomatic implications were staggering. No non-draconian had ever witnessed a flame communion. It was the most closely guarded spiritual practice in their culture. "This is a great honor," Julia said carefully, "though I'm concerned about Lily's well-being. The process sounds intensive." "It is," Vizara confirmed, "but provisions will be made for her comfort, and I give my personal assurance of her safety." The High Matriarch's head tilted slightly. "There is something else you should understand, Ambassador. The royal clutch appears to be incorporating elements of the human lullabies into their flame patterns." "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," Vizara said with what might have been a smile, "that the future rulers of the Draconian Empire may carry human melodies in their sacred connection to our ancestors. Your species will become part of our eternal song." The implications left Julia momentarily speechless. "I would like you to explain the significance of this to the human Lily," Vizara continued. "She should understand the honor being bestowed upon her. The flame communion begins tomorrow at first moonrise." After receiving Vizara's permission to leave, Julia hurried to find Lily. She located her in a small chamber adjacent to the royal nursery, taking a brief rest while the younglings were being examined by the scientific team. "Ambassador," Lily greeted her with a tired smile. "The younglings are doing remarkably well today. They've actually started humming parts of the lullabies back to me." "That's what I need to talk to you about," Julia said, taking a seat beside her. "Something extraordinary is happening, Lily. Something that could change human-draconian relations forever." Lily listened intently as Julia explained the significance of the flame bearers, the upcoming communion ritual, and the unprecedented request for her continued presence. "So these patterns they've been making with their scales," Lily said slowly, "they're actually some kind of spiritual language?" "From what I understand, it's how they connect to their ancestral memory," Julia confirmed. "And they're incorporating your lullabies into that connection." Lily was quiet for a moment, processing the magnitude of the situation. "I'm just singing the songs my grandmother taught me," she said finally. "I never imagined they could have such an impact." "That's exactly why they're so powerful," Julia pointed out. "They're authentic cultural transmissions, passed down through generations. The Draconians value their ancestral connections above all else. In your lullabies, they've recognized a parallel to their own traditions." "What happens during this communion ritual?" Lily asked. "That's just it. We don't know exactly. It's their most sacred ceremony, never before witnessed by non-Draconians." Julia leaned forward. "Lily, you need to understand. What's being offered is unprecedented. But it also comes with responsibility. The diplomatic implications are enormous." "You're saying I shouldn't make any mistakes," Lily said, understanding dawning in her eyes. "I'm saying you'll be representing humanity at a pivotal moment in our interspecies relations," Julia confirmed. "Everything you do, everything you say, will be remembered by beings who literally carry the memories of their ancestors within them." Lily took a deep breath. "No pressure, then," she said, repeating her earlier joke, though with more nervousness this time. "You've been perfect so far," Julia assured her. "Just continue as you have been. Follow the protocols, respect their customs, and most importantly, keep singing those lullabies." The next day passed in a flurry of preparations. Julia was permitted to brief Lily on the limited information they had about the flame communion, while Draconian attendants prepared special garments for her to wear during the ceremony. "The fabric is woven from materials that won't interfere with the younglings' developing flame connections," explained a senior attendant as Lily was fitted with a flowing robe of shimmering blue material. "And the design incorporates symbolic elements that honor your role as a nurturing guide." By the time the first of Draconix Prime's 7 moons began to rise, Lily was as prepared as she could be. Julia accompanied her to the entrance of the sacred chamber, a different location from the regular nursery, situated deep within the mountain upon which the palace was built. "Remember everything we discussed," Julia said, clasping Lily's hands in her own. And remember that you've already accomplished more for human draconian relations than anyone thought possible. Lily nodded, her expression a mixture of nervousness and determination. I won't let Earth down, Ambassador. I know you won't, Julia replied with a smile. Now go make history. The massive doors to the sacred chamber opened, and High Matriarch Vizara herself emerged to escort Lily inside. Julia caught a brief glimpse of a vast, cavern-like space illuminated by what appeared to be living flame before the doors closed again, leaving her alone in the antechamber with only her thoughts and the weight of diplomatic hopes. Inside the sacred chamber, Lily fought to maintain her composure. The space was unlike anything she had ever seen, a natural cavern whose walls glittered with embedded crystals that reflected and amplified the light from a central pit of blue-white flame. The royal dragonlings were arranged around this flame, their scales shimmering with complex patterns that shifted and changed like living language. Around the perimeter stood 12 elder draconians, their massive wings extended, heads bowed in what appeared to be deep meditation. Their scales glowed with inner light, creating a secondary illumination that cast otherworldly shadows across the cavern walls. Vizara guided Lily to a small alcove near the flame pit. This is your place, the High Matriarch explained, her voice hushed yet carrying clearly. When the communion begins, the younglings will enter a trance state. It can be disorienting for them. Your songs will provide an anchor, a familiar pattern to guide them through the ancestral memories. Lily nodded, trying to absorb everything while maintaining the dignity expected of her. When should I begin singing? You will know, Vizara said cryptically. Trust in the connection you have formed with the royal clutch. They will call to you when they need your voice. With that, the High Matriarch moved to her position at the head of the flame pit. She raised her massive wings, and the chamber fell into complete silence. What followed was unlike anything Lily could have imagined. The blue-white flames suddenly surged upward, forming a spiraling column that reached toward the apex of the cavern. Within its twisting patterns, Lily thought she could see faces, thousands of them, appearing and disappearing too quickly to distinguish individual features. The dragonlings responded immediately. Their eyes glazed over, taking on the same blue-white glow as the flame. Their bodies became rigid, wings extending to their full span despite their youth. And from their throats came a sound, not the wailing that had plagued the nursery, but a harmonized humming that resonated with the crystalline walls. Lily watched in awe as patterns of light began to flow from the central flame to the younglings, creating visible connections like strands of luminescent silk. The elders around the perimeter added their own harmonic tones, deepening and enriching the resonance until Lily could feel it vibrating in her chest. Then, suddenly, one of the dragonlings broke pattern. Its wings began to flutter erratically, and its harmonic hum shifted to a distressed keening. A ripple of concern passed through the elders, though they maintained their positions and continued their harmonic support. A second dragonling followed the first, its connection to the flame wavering. Then a third. Within moments, all 7 were showing signs of distress, their newly formed connections to the ancestral flame fluctuating dangerously. Vizara's voice cut through the growing chaos. Human Lily, they call for you. Lily understood immediately. She took a deep breath and began to sing, the same lullaby she had first used in the nursery. Her voice seemed small in the vast chamber, yet it carried clearly, weaving between the harmonics provided by the elders. The effect was immediate. The first dragonling to show distress settled, its wings relaxing, its connection to the flames stabilizing. The others followed suit, one by one returning to the communion trance, guided by the familiar melody that had brought them comfort in the nursery. Encouraged, Lily continued singing, moving through her repertoire of lullabies as the ceremony progressed. She noticed something extraordinary as she sang. The patterns within the central flame began to shift, incorporating elements that matched the rhythm and flow of her songs. The ancestral memories themselves seemed to be responding to the human melodies, creating new patterns that had never existed before. Hours passed, though in the timeless atmosphere of the sacred chamber, Lily barely noticed. She sang until her throat was raw, pausing only when one of the attendants offered her water infused with something that instantly soothed her vocal cords. Finally, as the last of Draconix Prime's 7 moons reached its zenith, the ceremony began to wind down. The connections between the flame and the dragonlings gradually thinned, then detached entirely. The central flame receded, returning to a small, dancing light at the center of the pit. The dragonlings' eyes cleared, returning to their normal jewel-like appearance. They looked around, seeming to take in their surroundings with new awareness. When their gazes fell upon Lily, all 7 moved toward her in perfect unison. Vizara and the elder Draconians watched in amazement as the royal clutch surrounded the human, their wings gently brushing against her in what Lily somehow understood was a gesture of profound gratitude and connection. "It is done," Vizara announced, her voice filled with wonder. "The communion is complete." The elders bowed deeply, first to the royal clutch, then, to Lily's surprise, to her. "What happens now?" Lily asked softly as the dragonlings continued to press close to her, seeking the physical contact they had grown accustomed to during their lullaby sessions. "Now," Vizara said, approaching, "the royal clutch enters the final phase of maturation. They will grow quickly, integrating the ancestral memories they have received. And they will carry something new within them, the songs of earth, woven into the fabric of our most sacred traditions." The High Matriarch's expression was solemn yet radiant. "Human Lily Dawson, you have given the Draconian Empire a gift beyond measure. Your melodies will echo through generations of our rulers, creating a bond between our species that can never be broken." Back in the diplomatic quarters, Julia waited anxiously for news. The flame communion had continued far longer than anyone had anticipated, nearly a full planetary rotation. When her communication device finally chimed, she nearly dropped it in her haste to answer. "Ambassador Clark," First Scientist Calix's voice came through clearly. "The High Matriarch requests your immediate presence in the ceremonial hall." "Is Lily all right?" Julia asked, already moving toward the door. "The human Lily Dawson is well," Calix assured her. "More than well. She has accomplished something that will be recorded in our histories for millennia to come." The ceremonial hall was filled beyond capacity when Julia arrived. It seemed every high-ranking Draconian in the palace had gathered for whatever was about to occur. She was escorted to a position near the front, where she found Lily already seated, looking exhausted but radiant. "Are you okay?" Julia whispered as she took her place. Lily nodded, her eyes bright despite her obvious fatigue. "It was, beyond words, Ambassador. I've never experienced anything like it." Before Julia could ask for details, a ceremonial horn sounded, and High Matriarch Vizara entered the hall. Following behind her came the royal clutch, but they were changed. Though still clearly younglings, they had grown noticeably, their scales now displaying complex patterns that shifted and changed with each movement. "The flame communion has been completed," Vizara announced to the assembled gathering. "The royal clutch has received the wisdom of our ancestors. But they have also received something new, a gift from Earth, carried in the voice of a human who sang when our younglings needed guidance." Vizara turned to face Julia and Lily directly. "In recognition of this gift, and in acknowledgement of the bond now formed between our species, I hereby decree the following. The territories bordering human space shall be designated as a joint protectorate, to be defended by both our empires against any who would threaten either of our peoples." A murmur of surprise rippled through the assembly. This was far more than the trade agreements and technology sharing Julia had hoped to negotiate. Furthermore, Vizara continued, the terraforming technologies previously restricted will now be shared with humanity, along with the scientific knowledge necessary to implement them safely. Julia could hardly believe what she was hearing. In a single decree, Vizara had granted Earth access to technologies that would open dozens of new worlds for human habitation, technologies they had expected to spend decades negotiating for. Finally, the High Matriarch said, her voice taking on a more formal tone. In the ancient tradition of the Draconian Empire, when a being of another species renders service to the royal lineage, they must be appropriately honored. At a gesture from Vizara, one of the royal younglings stepped forward, carrying a small object in its claws. It approached Lily and presented the item to her, a crystalline pendant that glowed with the same blue-white light as the sacred flame. Human Lily Dawson, Vizara pronounced, you are hereby named Friend of the Flame, Protector of the Royal Clutch, and Voice of Earth within the Draconian Empire. This crystal contains a spark of the sacred flame itself, freely given by those you have nurtured. It marks you as one who may travel freely within our territories and speak with the authority of one who serves the royal lineage. Lily accepted the pendant with trembling hands, clearly overwhelmed by the honor being bestowed upon her. Ambassador Clark, Vizara continued, turning to Julia. Your government will receive the formal documents outlining our new alliance. I trust you will convey to your leaders the significance of what has transpired here. I will, Your Magnificence, Julia assured her, already imagining the reaction from Earth when they received news of this diplomatic breakthrough. The ceremony concluded with another sounding of the ceremonial horn, after which the assembly began to disperse. The royal younglings, however, remained close to Lily, clearly reluctant to be separated from her. They have formed a permanent bond with you, Vizara explained as she approached the two humans. It is unprecedented, but not unwelcome. They will mature quickly now, growing into their roles as rulers. But they will always remember the human who sang to them when they needed guidance through the flame. What happens now? Julia asked, still processing the magnitude of what had occurred. Now, Vizara said, we begin the work of building a true alliance between our peoples. The royal clutch will require Lily's presence for some time yet, perhaps another lunar cycle. After that, they will be sufficiently matured to continue without her daily songs, though they would welcome her return whenever possible. Lily looked at the dragonlings surrounding her, their jewel-like eyes fixed on her with unmistakable affection. I would be honored to continue serving them, Your Magnificence, and to return whenever they wish. As for the broader implications, Vizara continued, turning to Julia, I believe we have much to discuss regarding our mutual neighbor, the Krell. Their expansion threatens both our interests, and a joint strategy would benefit both our species. Earth will be eager to cooperate, Julia assured her. Later, as they walked back to the diplomatic quarters, Lily finally had a moment to process everything that had happened. I never imagined when I took the position at the embassy that I'd end up as some kind of interstellar diplomat, she said with a bewildered laugh. The best diplomats are often those who never intended to be diplomats at all, Julia replied with a smile. You accomplished what all our formal negotiations couldn't. You created a genuine connection. All because my grandmother taught me lullabies, Lily mused, her hand going to the crystalline pendant that now hung around her neck. It pulsed gently with inner light, as if responding to her touch. Sometimes the most powerful tools of diplomacy are the simplest, Julia said. A shared meal, a gesture of respect, a song that brings comfort. As they reached the embassy complex, they paused to look up at the night sky, where Draconix Prime's 7 moons shone down on them. Ambassador, Lily said hesitantly, do you think this will really change things between our species? Julia considered the question carefully. The High Matriarch said your songs are now woven into their sacred flame, into the very memory of their species. The future rulers of their empire will grow up with human melodies as part of their spiritual foundation. She smiled. Yes, Lily. I think this changes everything. In the months and years that followed, Julia's prediction proved accurate. The alliance between Earth and the Draconian Empire flourished, built on the unexpected foundation of lullabies from a grandmother's homeland. Lily Dawson became a respected figure in interspecies relations, dividing her time between Earth and Draconian territories, her unique connection to the royal clutch opening doors that formal diplomacy never could. And on a dozen newly terraformed worlds, Human colonies thrived under the protection of the joint Earth-Draconian fleet, their children growing up with stories of the human Maid whose songs had changed the course of galactic history. But perhaps most telling of all was a simple tradition that began in those early colonies and spread throughout human space. At night, human parents would sing to their children the same lullabies that Lily had sung to the Dragonlings, passing down not just a melody, but a reminder of how the simplest human traditions could resonate across the stars. In diplomatic archives and historical records, the events on Draconix Prime would be analyzed and studied for generations. Scholars would debate the political implications, the technological advancements, the strategic advantages gained by both species. But for those who had witnessed it firsthand, like Julia and Lily, the truth was far simpler. Sometimes, the most powerful force in the universe isn't advanced technology, military might, or even formal diplomacy. Sometimes, it's just a human voice, singing songs that have comforted children for generations, reminding everyone who hears them that across the vast differences of species and cultures, some needs are universal. The need for comfort, for connection, and for the simple reassurance that someone cares enough to sing you to sleep. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.